It began with a hum. Not the sound of servers or the static of a dial-up modem, but the quiet, electric hum of possibility. America, in the mid-1990s, felt as if it had stumbled upon a magic lamp. The genie's name was the Internet, and it promised to grant not just 3 wishes, but as many as your imagination could dream up. In coffee shops, dorm rooms, and cluttered home offices, young men and women whispered about websites as if they were secret treasure maps. You could start a company today, get investors tomorrow, and by next year, you might be a millionaire. Maybe even a billionaire. Money began to flow, not like a stream, but like a flood. Venture capitalists handed out checks with fewer questions than they would ask when buying lunch. Stock prices for companies with barely a business plan doubled, then tripled, sometimes in a single day. The headlines screamed it, the future is here. And people believed it. But underneath the glow of screens and the buzz of IPO parties, there was a dangerous truth. No one really knew how this was all supposed to work. Profits. Revenue. These were old-world terms, relics of a slower age. Now all that mattered was growth. And like any good story that begins with a genie, there was a catch, a price for the wish. By 1997, Silicon Valley was no longer just a place. It was a fever. Office parks that once housed dull insurance firms now glowed with neon logos and the sound of furious typing. Startups with strange, half-made-up names ending with .com, appeared like mushrooms after a storm. Inside those offices, 20-something founders in jeans and hoodies talked to television reporters about revolutionizing the way humans live. It didn't matter if the idea was selling dog food online or creating virtual malls. If it involved the internet, investors lined up to throw money at it. The New York Stock Exchange and NASDAQ felt like casinos where every spin of the wheel came up a winner. People quit stable jobs to day trade, staring at glowing monitors in their kitchens, their eyes wide as their portfolios grew by thousands of dollars in minutes. It was the golden age of paper billionaires. Founders whose net worth on paper rivaled that of oil tycoons and Wall Street kings. Lavish parties spilled out of nightclubs in San Francisco. Ferraris and Porsches crowded the parking lots of humble office buildings. But with each passing day, the genie whispered louder. What if the magic runs out? In early 2000, the magic began to flicker. It started quietly, a missed earnings report here, a failed product launch there. Analysts who once spoke with unshakable confidence began to shift uncomfortably in their chairs during television interviews. The first to fall were the smaller companies, the ones with no revenue, no product, sometimes not even a functioning website. Their stock prices, which had once soared to the stratosphere, plummeted in days. But the panic spread faster than anyone imagined. Investors, once drunk on the promise of endless growth, began to sell. And sell. And sell. The NASDAQ, which had reached an all-time high in March, began its freefall. In a matter of weeks, billions of dollars in wealth simply evaporated. The bright-eyed founders who had once been hailed as geniuses watched their fortunes and their companies vanish like smoke. Suddenly, lavish office parties were canceled. The Ferraris disappeared from parking lots. Coffee shops that had been filled with venture capitalists now sat eerily quiet. The dot-com dream was collapsing, and it was happening faster than anyone could comprehend. By late 2000, the bubble was not just deflating, it was bursting wide open. The headlines turned grim. Tech stocks in freefall. Billions lost in hours. The media, once the greatest cheerleader of the new economy, now became its coroner, dissecting every failure. At startups across Silicon Valley, the mood shifted overnight. One morning you were sipping lattes and talking about changing the world. The next, your CEO was standing in front of the team, voice trembling, announcing layoffs. Sometimes half the staff. Sometimes all of it. People left their offices carrying cardboard boxes filled with dreams, company hoodies, half-empty coffee mugs, and unused business cards with titles like Vice President of Vision. Some went home to small apartments they could barely afford anymore. Others packed up entirely and left California, their brief taste of the boom nothing more than an expensive memory. For the founders who had once been untouchable, the fall was brutal. Multi-million-dollar fortunes evaporated before they could sell a single share. IPO millionaires became unemployed in less than a year. Those who had taken out massive loans to buy mansions or luxury cars were suddenly drowning in debt. It was a reckoning. The belief that the internet would instantly rewrite the laws of business and money was gone. Reality had returned, and it was merciless. For some, the dot-com years were a lifetime's fortune condensed into a single dizzying climb. Take Jason, a 27-year-old programmer from Seattle. He joined a tiny e-commerce startup in 1997, earning a modest salary but paid mostly in stock options. By the year 2000 on paper, he was worth nearly $5 million. He bought a sports car in cash, moved into a glass-walled condo overlooking the bay, and booked first-class flights just for weekend trips. But the market did not wait for anyone. By the spring of 2001, Jason's company's stock had plunged from $100 a share to less than $1. His fortune vanished. The sports car was repossessed. The condo was sold at a loss. He moved back into a small apartment, working freelance jobs to pay the bills. Then there was Melissa, a former accountant who left her stable job to join a flashy San Francisco startup. The company folded before she even hit her one-year anniversary. She was left with a pile of unpaid rent, maxed-out credit cards, and a resume that looked like a gamble gone wrong. Yet there were survivors and winners. Jeff Bezos, founder of Amazon, saw his company's stock fall from over $100 to less than $10, but he held on. Others quietly built sustainable businesses, outlasting the chaos and proving that the internet was not a fad. It was just a dangerous, unpredictable frontier. The bubble had burst, but the web was here to stay. When the smoke cleared, America was left with a sobering reality. Trillions of dollars in market value had vanished. The Nasdaq Composite Index, which had soared to over 5,000 points in early 2000, now sat under 2,000. Retirement accounts were slashed in half. Dreams were postponed. Some never recovered. The culture of easy money and get-rich-by-Thursday thinking faded, at least for a while. Venture capital firms became more cautious, demanding real revenue before funding bold ideas. Startup founders began to talk less about changing the world overnight and more about building sustainable growth. But perhaps the biggest shift was psychological. The dot-com bust planted a quiet, enduring skepticism in the American mind. When a neighbor bragged about doubling his money in some hot new tech stock, people remembered 2000 and whispered to themselves, "We've seen this movie before." Still, the internet story was far from over. Beneath the ruins, solid foundations remained: broadband infrastructure, online payment systems, and millions of Americans now comfortable living, working, and shopping online. These were the seeds of the next chapter in the digital revolution. And in the shadows, a new generation of entrepreneurs was already taking notes, preparing for the next big wave. In the years that followed, a strange thing happened. From the ashes of the dot-com wreckage, new giants began to rise. In 2004, a scrappy social networking site called Facebook quietly appeared in a Harvard dorm room. In 2006, a video-sharing platform named YouTube began to change how people consumed media. And in 2004, two Stanford graduates launched a company called Google into the public markets, this time with a real business model and billions in annual revenue. These companies had learned the hard lessons of the bubble. They focused on actual profits, on building products people use daily, and on expanding steadily rather than burning millions just for eyeballs. The public, still wary, approached cautiously, but slowly, trust began to return. Yet history has a way of repeating itself. As technology evolved, new manias emerged, cryptocurrencies promising to reinvent money, artificial intelligence startups valued at billions before a single product launch, and meme stocks driven by online crowds. The dot-com bubble was no longer just a financial story. It had become a parable, a reminder that in every boom lies the seed of a bust, and in every bust, the seed of the next boom. For those who lived through it, the images never fade. The flashing stock tickers, the champagne toasts, the crushing headlines, the hushed voices of employees carrying boxes out of their offices. The internet did make billionaires. But it also taught America that fortune and failure often travel side by side, and the distance between them can be measured in days.